You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I am joined, as always, by your co-host, Kevin. Gentlemen, Kevin, how we doing? I sat there, started going, gentlemen, and I'm like, there's no Alex tonight. So,
No, Alex is a bit under the weather. Hope he feels better. There's a lingering thought that it might be hockeyitis, but he claims it's not. Okay, we're gonna trust him. But no, man, we're doing good. We're doing good. Get to do another draft breakdown. NHL, NBA playoffs have started. The draft is right around the corner. Dynasty leagues are kind of itching to get these rookie drafts in and jump the gun essentially. I can't tell you how many notices I've gotten on Sleeper. Your draft starts in 3 weeks. It's like, good Lord, guys, like. People they got the itch, right? They got the itch, but it's good. So overall, things are good. I can't complain. It's a fun time of year, exploratory, if you will, as we do this research and kind of our prognostication skills, if you will, with the draft. And then, a little bit of hockey more so than the NBA for me, but I know the NBA playoffs are going on as well for some folks that really enjoy that. But it's good, man. How you been? You been good?
I can't complain. I cannot complain. So always Tuesdays are always probably my favorite day of the week because I get to come on. We get to chat the football. We get to
hold up the show because you and I are talking dad life here pre-show instead of paying attention to the clock.
Yeah, that was so. Anybody that's wondering, that's exactly why we were a little late tonight on the live stream. Is Kevin and I were doing the dad chat. And quite frankly, that could be our next podcast. There's just do an entire episode on dad life. So I'm sure, right. And we could really go off that first deal where we were talking about that these kids don't come with a manual and how. So anyway, that's that could be, we could do an entire season on that one. Like this was not in my kids' user manual when I took them home from the hospital, but.
Yeah. Things parents should pass down to their children before they have children, but they don't.
Part one.
Exactly.
Do an entire, that could be an entire podcast in its own. There we go. All right, we got the next show idea too. Anyway,
call it Dad Bod Mafia.
Hey, I like it. I like it a lot. We'll get started on the artwork and all that as well.
Exactly. The DBMs.
Exactly. So, but no, we got a great show tonight, right? Like you already hit it up. We're gonna hit some mock draft. This one we're gonna do with trades. It's too bad Alex isn't here because I was gonna point out a couple of things as we were going through the draft on that. So we'll have to save that for next week and just remember to get his input on that one. We've got the Dynasty Big Board where we went through and did some of our top rankings for positional for Dynasty fantasy football out there as well. And then we're really kind of coming down to it. Only about a week and a half before we hit actual NFL draft time. And, of course, we'll be live for that. We got the first round reaction, some great guests coming on here on the 27th. We're going to go live. I want to say our start time's 7:45 Eastern PM, about 15 minutes before the NFL draft goes live.
I'm so excited for this. Yeah, I really am. It's one of my favorite nights of doing a show. And I do have a lot of favorite nights, right? I love talking draft strategies. I like when we go through, and kind of do these mock drafts and the team and player breakdowns. But there's something about draft night, right? Especially the first round of draft night, being able to hang out with you, hang out with all of our guests that come on and kind of shoot the breeze and react to these picks. And it's more much like how this was founded, right? It's much more guys sitting around, a living room, giving each other a hard time, tossing ideas out, their opinions and everything else. And it's just, it's good for my soul. I mean, really, draft night is good for my soul for a lot of different reasons. So I'm so looking forward to next Thursday night.
Yeah, it's and it's always amazing too, right? Like some of you're talking about some of the sitting around the living room and kind of giving the hard time and some of that, like some of the draft moments that we've had on that episode as well have been amazing, right? Like the year that they drafted Patrick Surtain, right? When Micah Parsons still on the board, Justin Fields still on the board, and I just remember that one there. Last year we had a couple of really good ones. We had Bo Big Time having his reaction when his Cowboys drafted,
and that turned out to be a really good pick. Like,
yes, it did.
That taking offensive tackle there as much as no one really thought, right? A lot of head scratching went along with that pick. It worked. I mean, Smith played Tyler Smith, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Played a ton for the Cowboys and started for a vast majority of that season. They needed that pick, and he actually showed out and graded pretty damn well. So, again, this is why we're amateurs, right? But nevertheless, the reaction, like you said, from Bo Big Time was priceless. He was so frustrated with what happened.
Well, then we had Hutch, who's an Eagles fan. Hutchinson Brown, who's an Eagle fan. When that AJ Brown trade happened, and his reaction there as well, like that was another just kind of really, really good moment there. And there's a ton of those we could do. We could spend the next hour just kind of recapping our favorite ones from that episode. But we'll just leave that as the teaser there and say, guys, make sure that you tune in for the first round of the NFL draft to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast when we do the live stream there. You can find it on youtube.com/@GoodOldBoysFF. We'll, of course, get the link and all that up there, and you can find it on the channel. But you can go to the channel nonetheless. Click the subscribe button while you're there. Hit that bell. You'll get the notification when we go live on draft night. That way you don't even have to, set anything special. YouTube will take care of it for you. Click that bell. We'll and get that noti. So anyway, there's been some news since we last talked as well. Jalen Hurts had a life-changing day the other day where signed a 5-year, $255 million contract to be the Eagles, quarterback of for the next foreseeable future there.
Yeah, absolutely. Was 158 of it guaranteed? No, I think trade.
It was 179 was
179. Excuse me. The no trade clause, right, was a big deal. And what? Good for him, and good for the Eagles, because there's enough of these guys getting lined up. The first guy was getting the best deal. You right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Tried to hit mute, it didn't work.
It's all good. The first guy's getting the best deal. So this puts pressure back on the Ravens, and really I think it helps the Ravens more so than it helps Lamar because of where that guaranteed money is and everything else. So it kind of resets some of these expectations there. So there's that. Joe Burrow's contracts coming up, obviously. Justin Herbert, right? They're working on his. I don't feel like anything got done, but I know that they're talking about his, and kind of that next wave. So the Eagles, I feel like, got a really fair deal out of that. Jalen Hurts got a good deal for himself. He is now set up for generational wealth for his family yet to come. So good for him. Congratulations. He's played well for a guy that we were worried about for accuracy, right? And is he more than just kind of a scrambler with an okay arm? Has been extremely efficient over the last couple seasons, and arguably, until he got dinged up at the end of the season, was the MVP of the league last year, right? So kudos to him. I like that move a lot. Another one that just came through today. I guess it's not official yet, but Allen Robinson to the Steelers, with the Steelers paying reportedly $5 million of Allen Robinson's contract, and then they just swap late round picks. Like, it's a pretty good deal. Now, you hope that Allen Robinson still has something left, right? Like, he's just been off the last couple seasons, right? The last season with the Bears, and then his season with the Rams, he's not the same guy. For whatever reason, the switch just kind of flipped off, hoping Mike Tomlin can kind of tap into that. And he can also be a good tutor, role model, all the things for George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, and kind of give them a well-rounded three-headed monster there for Kenny Pickett as the Steelers are still young, but ever developing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. OBJ also signed to the Ravens there as well. So you had that one where, the Ravens seemingly trying to, and that was one of the other things. Lamar was actively recruiting, from what it sounded like, to bring Lamar in, or to bring OBJ in there as well. But from everything that I've seen, the deal that Jalen Hurts just signed was not that dissimilar from the offer that it looks like Lamar turns down. At least that's what's been reported, right? Like, we aren't in that room with it. We don't know the fine details of that, but the broad strokes that have been painted for us through various reports out there was that Lamar turned down a 5-year, $250 million contract, so about $5 million less than Jalen Hurts there. The guaranteed money was $175 million, so about $4 million less guaranteed there. But like, that puts it where you're in the ballpark and you're talking the same realm there. So, and that's something that you can negotiate because you're talking percentage points type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. That's a performance bonus or roster bonuses, right. Or if you show up to OTAs, we give you an extra $2 million just for, gracing us with your presence type thing, right? Like you at that point, it's chump change. When you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars,
right?
$4 million is chump change. So hopefully it works out for them. A couple other interesting things. Reports are that Tennessee has reached out to Green Bay about Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. Jets deal seemingly stalled for the moment. So that was interesting. And then reports of Dalvin Cook and possibly Joe Mixon both being released, depending on if Joe Mixon would restructure his contract to create cap space for the Bengals, and if the Vikings can find a trade partner for Dalvin Cook. How interesting would that be? I don't think it's going to be pre-draft, but post-draft even. How much does that change a team's strategy, right? And if you're not the Bijan Robinson team that drafts him, how much does that change your strategy, right? Like, could I do something with this and pair them up? And what kind of money would they be commanding there on the open market? Because the $10 million running back's kind of gone, right? We've seen that. The franchise tag is still up there a little bit, but that's because of existing contracts when it went into effect. But going forward, that franchise tag is going to be pretty stinking low because these teams just aren't paying guys at the running back position. They're very comfortable incorporating an RBBC, whether it's 2 or 3 guys, and just kind of trial by fire. Like, we will just play the hot hand and see how it goes. And we think we can do very well with, a bunch of B to B minus type players. We don't need that A plus running back to be successful.
Right. Well, and you think about too how much the NFL has changed there, right? Like, it wasn't that uncommon to see, even 20 years ago, it wasn't that uncommon to see teams run the ball, 50 plus percent of the time, right? Like, where you would see 35, 40 carries a game with the majority of that workload going to one guy. Nowadays it's, the script's kind of flipped, where your team might realistically run the ball 20 to 25 times and have 2 or 3 different backs in that mix there. So there's certainly a lot to be said there, and it's going to be very interesting, right? Like, you're talking about the strategy on that. I think that you're going to see a lot of what the Vikings and Bengals plans truly are with how they draft on day 1, day 2, and if they spend a day 1 or day 2 pick on running back. I think that will speak very loudly as to what their plans are with the existing running backs that they have in house there. But here's another crazy thought as well, right? When you were going through some of that and you were talking franchise tag as well, like, this is something that you think about some of the true backs out there that could be workhorse backs. It would not surprise me to see teams start going to that, where you take the 1A, 1B type of running backs. If you've got that type of depth in the running back class in round 1, you get the 5th year option on it, you franchise tag them, and you've got them for, there's 6 years of productivity that you typically see out of the running back position in the league, and then they move on and go to the next guy type of thing there. But it's not that uncommon that you're going to see running backs be the most productive throughout their entire career through the first 2 or 3 years of their NFL career there. So it was very interesting just kind of looking at the evolution of that position throughout the NFL these days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And never a dull moment, right? Always the ever revolving door, especially at that position, but could lead to some good, new or old faces in new places, right? Like I see, some specialty segments, if you will, on some of this, if it does come to fruition, because a lot of running backs right now, and this is another good class of running backs. So they're going to be making room for these young guys and just kind of hoping that the one you draft hits, right? And if you do, then you're set up for the next 4 or 5 years without having anything to really worry about.
Absolutely. Actually, there was one last thing that I wanted to touch on, and we'll get into our draft there. But one of the other kind of crazy things looking at the Jalen Hurts contract, right? Like, we talked heavily going into last year that it's really hard to win, championships if you pay your quarterback a ton of money, things like that, and how they're structured because of how much of your salary cap's spent that way. Well, and it's very quickly becoming that's where all teams are kind of heading, and that's where all roads are leading for that position. But what's very interesting is when you look at the actual money on that, there's a very good chance that Jalen Hurts could play the entirety of this new extension that he just signed, and he may not even crack the top 10 quarterback cap hit in the league on any given one of those years. Like, that's kind of crazy to think about, that he just signed a deal that basically averages out to $50 million a year, and he very well may not crack top 10 at positional market value on a cap hit on any of those seasons. So kind of a crazy thought when you put it in that perspective.
Yeah, that is a crazy thought, right? And just it's all TV revenue, right? That's a big deal with all these TV contracts coming up and sponsorships and everything else. The cap number just keeps growing, right? Like, this money is any athletics, right? Any professional athletics. It's not just football, but any of them is it's monopoly money, right? Like, we seriously, we cannot physically, mentally comprehend what that does on a number of different levels. It's just you pass go, you collect $200, right? Like, it's just, they just keep passing go. So it's cool. It's good for them. Like, they earn it, right? They do all the things. And then, not to mention, for a lot of cases, what their physical life is like after their athletic days are done in any sport, is there's a lot of wear and tear that it's an ugly side of all sports that people don't see, especially their legs, for all of them. Their knees, their ankles, their feet, like, it's their backs in a lot of cases, right? Like, there's a lot of wear and tear that does it takes its toll, right, on the physical body. And that's not even getting into the CTE stuff with the concussions and everything else. This is just the average wear and tear of building that much mass on a human frame, and the power and explosion that they create by putting their foot or feet on the ground and pushing off, whether it's a run, whether it's a jump, whether, skating, I don't care what it is, tennis, like, it doesn't matter. The explosion that comes from their feet to the ground is absolutely ridiculous. And if you ever have time and you're bored and want to dig into it, look at the science behind it. It is something that is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I know. Sports Science has done a couple of things out there on that, and fantastic episodes. Every one of those that they've got kind of covering those things, and absolutely amazing the actual force that is put on the body through those activities. But
yeah,
any other thoughts here on some news? Or are we ready to start hitting up some drafting?
I think that's about it. There's a lot of smoke screens going on with the draft, right? So I hate to report on any one of those and have people think that that's gospel, but There's a lot of things floating around, right? Vegas now has Bryce Young, the overwhelming favorite to be drafted first overall.
Yep.
Very interesting because a lot. I don't know if it's quite split, but I would say that there is a very large number of people in the industry who don't believe that, who think it's going to be CJ Stroud no matter what. Vegas has Stroud, as a long shot to be the second pick by the Texans even right now. So it's very interesting, right? It's a lot of smoke screen though. Like there could be some truth behind it. Yes, they're insiders. Yes, they have some different sets of people that they can go to for information, but nevertheless, it's kind of like thinking there's never insider trading on Wall Street just to blow smoke and have a stock do one thing or another to help a particular group of people gain financial prowess. So take it as you will.
Absolutely. All right. I like it. Let's go ahead and get into it. And so this one here, a little bit different than the one we did last week. This one here, trades were allowed. So in order for a trade to happen, right, compensation needed to make sense. There was an entire chart that we used in order to do that. So one, the compensation needed to make sense. Two, it took kind of everybody to sign off and go, yeah, this team would probably do that. No, this team probably wouldn't. That type of stuff for us to be like, okay, let's try to make that as realistically as possible on what we could see happen there. So I'm going to start off this draft at the 101 with the Panthers. They're on the clock. They made the trade up to this. They're not trading back. They're going to take their quarterback here. And you mentioned it just a moment ago that Bryce Young has really picked up a ton of steam here. Vegas is very confident that he is going to be the number one selected there. And I think they might have something there, right? Like Vegas is rarely wrong when they put a heavy favorite on something like that. But I say all of that to say the fact that I think that they're going to take the better pocket passer to it, the bigger body frame guy, the guy that really is had a marvelous showing, has really kind of been a combine darling, pro day darling, has really done well through the draft process here. I think they're going to go with CJ Stroud, number one overall here.
Yeah, as of today, I agree with you completely, right? Last week I had the first overall. This is where I went. This week you had the first overall, so this is where you went as well. So you and I are thinking the same here. It is possible that come next Tuesday when we do our individuals that minds are changed. We figure something out, ever evolving. But at the moment, I do completely agree with that. So leading that into the Houston Texans at pick number 2, I have them taking Bryce Young as their future quarterback and leading the change. The changing of the guard down there in Houston, but I do think they pick up the Alabama prospect, and he is their guy of the future for now.
I like that, and that was one of the rumors that I've heard folks kind of circulating out there as well. Something that you touched on as well, saying that Houston may not necessarily be looking quarterback here, and they may go a different direction, may trade back on that one, and heard a team like the Raiders might have a guy in mind that they would want at the 2 spot and be willing to try and go up and get him again, right? Some of this is stuff that you're going to have to sift through and see if it's really some smoke screen going on or how much you really believe that. And I think at this point, Houston has got a ton of needs out there, but I think that they've seen over the last 2 seasons, Davis Mills probably isn't the future of that organization. And with a team like this, I don't know why you wouldn't go with a Bryce Young there or CJ Stroud, either one of those guys. So
yeah, new coaching staff, new regime, like get your guy in there, some guy that you can kind of plant your flag on, and really that will buy you some time, right? New quarterbacks do buy head coaches time to get everything else right. D'Amico Ryans, very attractive new candidate that popped up, went back home to Houston where he spent a large number of his playing days. It just seems to make sense that they are going quarterback with this second overall pick.
Right.
just to kind of help set the wheels in motion of the direction that this franchise wants to go going forward.
Agreed. Alrighty, and this one here, we did have a trade alert come in. The Arizona Cardinals decided to trade back. The Colts coming up to get their guy and make sure nobody else traded ahead of them. We were told, rumor had it, that Alex, the GM, is sitting at number 3, had to field a couple of different calls on a trade potential here. But Indy came up, got their guy, traded the number 3 pick, to moved up to the 3 pick, giving up the 4th, the 79th, and the 106 pick. And with the 3rd overall pick there, they went quarterback to get their guy of the future, Anthony Richardson here. And this is another one that, a lot of folks would, think that maybe it's a Will Levis here. Maybe it's Anthony Richardson. This is one that the new head coach in Indianapolis, I could see him going either way, right? Like, he has kind of gotten dubbed the quarterback guru, the quarterback whisperer over his last 2 stops, right? He was with Justin Herbert in Los Angeles during that rookie year in which Justin Herbert came out and set a rookie record for touchdowns thrown, really kind of came out, took the league by storm out there, and just came off of a stint at Philadelphia where, transformed Jalen Hurts to going into last season, right? There was a lot of questions and marks about his accuracy, a lot of questions of, can he be more than a scrambler? Can he develop into the pocket passer? Can he develop into really that true dual threat quarterback that can get it done with both the arm and the legs? And I would say that mission accomplished on that one. And I think at that point, they'll go with the guy that you look at where they've gone the last couple of quarterbacks that they've brought in, right? They brought in Phillip Rivers, pocket passer. The Colts brought in Carson Wentz. They brought in Matt Ryan. All 3 of those guys, much more in a Will Levis type of mold there, as far as being more of a pocket presence passer. And I think they're going to go a different route here. So that was part of the reason that they were doing that one. Any other thoughts there?
No, I like the potential here, right? Anthony Richardson he might give the lowest floor of I guess the top 4 quarterbacks really that we've been kind of talking about leading in here in the first round. But I do think he also has the highest ceiling because of his willingness to run with the football. And he does have a big frame, right? He is a lot like Cam Newton in a sense, right? The trick of this is, can you develop him into a better passer than Cam Newton to extend that longevity, right? We saw what Cam could do in a shorter stint down there in Carolina, and he made waves. He won an MVP. He got his team to the Super Bowl. But over the course of that time, it was a lot of development on mechanics. It was a lot of wear and tear on the body. And really after that Super Bowl season, Cam was never quite the same, right? It's easy as a hometown kid to say the Broncos cracked the code and they broke Cam Newton, but they kind of did between the Super Bowl and then the first game in the rematch, right? The following season, they put a punishment on Cam Newton, and not that he hadn't been hit before, but he definitely was not quite the same after those back-to-back games against the Broncos.
Yep. And so Alex isn't here to make his pick with the Cardinals, having traded back to acquire a bunch of other picks here. But he's going to go ahead and take Jalen Carter, defensive tackle for the Cards. And that's going to move us over here to number 5. Any other thoughts on pick 4 there in Jalen Carter?
I don't hate the pick. I think where I'm a little surprised with that pick in particular is, you could go back by trading back one spot, you're going to end up getting your guy anyway. I feel like Arizona's going to be going more in a pass rusher sense just because they have more of an immediate impact on the field. So that part I do, I could go either way, right? Jalen Carter is and can be disruptive in the middle for a team, and do some different things up front. But typically, if you're going to be going top 5, in most cases, you're going for that premium pass rusher if you're going on defense. So That's my only possible tweak. But then again, last time we had him going at the very next pick down to Seattle, right? So it's the same type of thing. So I like the pick. It would be good for the Cardinals, but I do think that they'd probably go pass rusher or a pass rushing specialist over a Jalen Carter to help the secondary, especially if Budda Baker is going to get traded.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I really think that that's a Will Anderson to Arizona. Just write it in pen almost is how confident I feel on that guy to that team type of scenario here. But that moves us to pick number 5 and Seattle. And Kevin, that puts you and the Seahawks back on the clock.
So I initially was kind of penciled in for Jalen Carter there, thinking Will Anderson was going to be gone. So Seattle pivots, but they get the pass rusher that they need, help that defense along. So Seattle is going to go Will Anderson at 5 overall.
Yeah, I really like that one there. I think that's, the Seahawks. The Seahawks, it very much seems like that's where they're going to go is really go with a defensive line guy there, edge rush type of guy there. The only way that I could see that potentially changing is I could see them potentially going, well, as much as I want to say, like, I could see them potentially going with a quarterback there because they've got their bridge guy in Geno to start bringing the next guy in and develop him. If you're taking a quarterback at 5th overall, like you're looking for them to see the field sooner than a year or two out type of thing, and you didn't just sign your quarterback to that kind of money for him to be just a 8-game type of bridge there. So
yeah, right. I think they're going to give Geno a chance to repeat his success. If for whatever reason it doesn't happen, then I think next year they might stick their toe into that water and try and get that quarterback so they have a development year and then try and get him on the field. But most teams are not nearly as patient as the Green Bay Packers are with backup quarterbacks that they draft in the first round. So a lot of these guys want their quarterback to see the field by year 2 at the latest. Most would like to see him in at year 1, regardless of what they tell the media. So for this, I agree with that. I think they pass on quarterback for now, and they're going to just try and tighten up that defense.
Yeah, I like that. So that puts Alex and the Detroit Lions back on the clock here. And Alex, looking on the defensive side of the ball, right? Like there was a move last week where the Lions traded away Okudah right before we did our mock draft last week, in which case we said, that the move that they were making, probably not the way that they're going to go there. But it looks very much like Alex has it where Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon, is going to be heading over to Detroit here. This is one of those that I don't necessarily dislike the pick. I'm also not necessarily a huge believer that they kind of go that route, but I could be wrong there. Detroit, that is one of the glaring holes that they have, is just on the defensive side of the ball. They got some really good things kind of going there with some of their young guys that they had on the defensive side of the ball last year. But I don't know if cornerback's really the move that they're going to make there, but I could certainly see the reason for it.
Yeah, I think that in a perfect world, I think Detroit would love for Jalen Carter to fall.
Yep.
Right. I think that is probably the top guy on their draft board, with him already being off. With moving Jeff Okudah, I do think that this becomes a glaring position of need. And with having the luxury of every single defensive back in this draft on the board to them, Christian Gonzalez is arguably the best corner in this draft. And so I think that's where they go to help fill their immediate need here. And he would be a day 1 starter if this is the case going to Detroit.
Yeah, that's very, very true there. So that moves myself and the Las Vegas Raiders onto the clock here. And I'm going to just go with the cornerback out of Illinois, Devin Witherspoon. He has he's shown the ability through college to be a guy that can be kind of just, the island, can be the guy that you put out there and can kind of be a shutdown corner on that side. Had a decent pro day there with some decent speed to it. He's long, he's rangy, and I think that in a in a division where you have quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and we'll see what Russell Wilson does here if he can recapture some of his former glory. But with those two kind of quarterbacks there, right? Like you start equipping on the defensive side of the ball, and that was a glaring hole for the Raiders last year, was that entire defensive backfield. So I think they do go corner there, and Devin Witherspoon can certainly be a guy that we could see go this early, just due to some of his shutdown nature there. Any thoughts on this pick?
I think it makes sense. The Raiders right now have a lot of needs, right? They have a lot of holes. I think a strong argument could be made for offensive tackle only because they are getting really long in the tooth there along the offensive line, to try and give some youth to help protect Jimmy G and make sure that he stays healthy after you made that investment in him. But I understand this pick. I really like Witherspoon. I think he's probably the most well-rounded cornerback in this draft class. But he didn't test quite as well as Gonzalez, and so I think that's why he's kind of graded as that half step below.
I like it. Alrighty, we had another trade happen here. Trade alert coming in. The Falcons are moving back. Tennessee coming up to get their guy, it looks like. Tennessee sending picks 11 and 72 over to get
Will Levis. So they did move up. They got their quarterback of the future. They realized that Malik Willis is not the answer. They don't see Ryan Tannehill being the long-term answer. Tennessee has a lot of holes as well. So, again, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't end up doing a trade, right? And they try and either trade back or acquire more draft picks, because this is a team with a lot of holes as well. But right now, I think it's so close that they just can't pass it up, right? They just don't know what they're going to do next year. And while you're this close, you're only giving up a third-round pick after you're swapping the first to make everything balance out as far as, the draft board calculator that we used worked. So the numbers matched up really well. So for this exercise, I had them moving up and getting their guy, so that way they didn't have to worry about Washington or anybody else trying to step up and grab Levis. So they get their guy of the future.
Yeah, the Buccaneers could be another team too that could be in the mix to try and trade up and get a guy like that too. Should Will Levis, Anthony Richardson fall, like you could see them trying to do that. And Tennessee's another one that I've heard rumored trying to like get all the way up to pick 2 or 3. Should the board fall that way to try and do that. I just don't know that they want to give up that much capital to move that far. I'd
be surprised if they do that. That is a ton of capital for them to move all the way up the board, but it's not impossible. And depending on what they're looking at, I mean, it might be, I'd say Derrick Henry, but none of these teams really need Arizona maybe. So they give Derrick Henry, they swap first-round picks, and then another piece or two still. Like, there's still a lot that they'd have to do to get inside that top 3.
Right. Well, and Tennessee had released Taylor Lewan, so an anchor on their offensive line for several years. Like, they've got a lot of holes there too. So even trying to give up, a lot of that I think you're right. I think that's probably a move too far for them to pull off there and still be competitive. But who knows? We've seen crazier things. But no, I like the move and them going up to try and get their guy of the future. So. That's going to move Alex and the Bears onto the clock. And Alex went for Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern, the Illinois, guy from Illinois, kind of the hometown guy there for the Bears. And what are the better offensive linemen graded out in this class? I like the move. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Bears to work on that offensive line. They've got to start trying to give Justin Fields some weapons there. The offensive line has been bad over the last several years here. So the move makes a lot of sense to me. Any other thoughts there?
No, I like it. The more I look at it and think about it, this just seems to fit really well together. So I have zero problems with this, as I believe this is exactly the same place that we had them last week.
It It very much is. That's one of those that I think Chicago addresses offensive line here with this pick, unless a guy like Jalen Carter falls. If he falls down to 9, I think that's probably where they go. Short of him being available at 9, I think they're addressing offensive line. So, all right, that's going to move the Eagles onto the clock here, and I'm on the clock with the Eagles, and the Eagles are going to take a guy out of Georgia, Nolan Smith, the edge rusher on this one, and kind of pair him well with some former college teammates there, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, both of those guys already in Philadelphia there. But Nolan Smith can certainly give that Eagles defense a little bit of some help there. And a team that had a lot of departures on the defensive side of the ball, certainly. Nolan Smith can be the guy that helps bolster that thing up, give it some youth, and bring in some future stability along that front.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Falcons are a little butthurt about this, honestly. I think they were trying to cheat the system a little bit, thinking that Nolan Smith would fall back down to them as the Eagles might address other needs. But nevertheless, I like this fit for Philadelphia. I like it for Nolan Smith. And it would be honestly, I think it'd be a scary combination to get a lot of these Georgia boys back together in Philadelphia. It's a lot of championship pedigree you have right there.
Right. And this is one of the, I see a lot of people and a lot of folks in the industry trying to mock Bijan Robinson to this pick at number 10. Personally, I don't really like the fit for him there. I know that, yes, he's going into a good offensive line. Yes, he's going in through there, but Eagles have already got some pretty decent options there at the running back position. Jalen Hurts, like for fantasy purposes, really don't like the landing spot for Bijan to Philly if that's the way it comes to be. But
I don't see it happening. I don't either. A running back going top 10.
No, I think those days are long past. So, all righty, Kevin, that brings you and the Falcons back onto the clock here at pick 11.
So the Falcons obviously traded back because of the trade with Tennessee. So even though they're licking their wounds losing Nolan Smith, they have plenty of other positions that they need to fill. So they're going to go back in and look at offensive tackle, where they're going to grab Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State to help anchor that offensive line who's been pretty leaky the last few seasons.
I like that one. I like it a lot. I think Paris Johnson is one of the guys that can be just a road grader and do very, very well for them, and really kind of help protect that quarterback position on that, and allow Desmond Ridder to further develop a little bit there as well. So I like the pick. Alex gets onto the board here with the Texans at pick 12. And he's going to go with Lucas Van Ness here for pick 12. The defensive lineman, edge rusher out of Iowa there. I don't dislike the pick. I also think that there's some other options that I think I would rather see the Texans try and go with there, right? You just went and got you spent the second round pick in this mock on a quarterback there. I'd like you to spend another premium pick on a wide receiver. You've got the best wide receiver available in the class here. The Texans really kind of little depleted in the wide receiver room there. So bringing in a guy like JSN, I think that would be a smart move there. But I can certainly get them going with the edge rusher there and trying to help build in the trenches.
I like this. I like it for Houston for a lot of different reasons. Again, this guy has a JJ Watt type feel, right? A little bit smaller, but high motor guy, came from the Big Ten, wreaked havoc out there, was really projected to go higher up in a lot of draft boards. He fell in this draft. So I think the Texans are really happy about this, and they're able to kind of get a cornerstone piece on both sides of the ball. So I think they're pretty happy about that. A lot of years I would agree with wide receiver, but there is no Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, type player at the wide receiver position. So I do think that they're pretty happy. offense and defense in the first round, but they feel like they get cornerstones on offense and defense that can help set the tone for their years to come.
Right. So I get it. Like I said, I don't dislike the pick. I'd like to see them invest, but just seeing a little bit different there. I like it. Let's go ahead and move on to pick number 13, the New York Jets. That puts me and the Jets on the clock. And the Jets are going to go out and just get a guy to bully a little bit on the offensive line there. Broderick Jones, the tackle out of Georgia. And this guy is a guy that can certainly, I think, help bolster the line for the Jets there. Something that hasn't necessarily been great. They've got a lot of needs along there. And this is a guy that, they can kind of flex, potentially flex the left tackle, bring him in right tackle, even maybe potentially flex him into one of the guards there. But this guy's a long player with a lot of speed to it. So I like the fact that, they're investing in that line to get a guy out there to potentially block, get to the second level, and really road grade for a guy like Breece Hall once he's back and in the fold there as well.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I think he plays guard his rookie year. I think that's kind of where they want him because of his speed and his ability to get up into the second level. So they're going to be able to use him and be that pull guard on whether it's counter plays or some end arounds, some different things to get some movement in the offensive line. Broderick Jones fits that bill because of his foot speed and how well he does in run blocking. So they can protect him a little bit on the pass pro. Although he didn't give up a sack, he can kind of get out over his skis a little bit, as we talked about during his player breakdown. But regardless, he could switch back outside to right tackle if needed. He played there his first 2 years at Georgia before making the switch to the left side. So he's comfortable on the right side, but I think he plays guard his rookie year. But nevertheless, the Jets come away with a starter.
Yep. Big fan of that pick there. That's going to move you and the New England Patriots onto the clock here.
So I struggled with this pick for the Patriots, right? Like it's hard to get into the mind of Belichick. Like receiver was staring me at the face going, man, they could do this, but Belichick and his receivers and how that doesn't work. So I did pivot a little bit. So I have the New England Patriots switching tones here a little bit. They went offensive tackle to help their young quarterback in Darnell Wright, the big tackle out of Tennessee.
Yeah, I like this one. I think Darnell Wright is a guy that's maybe not necessarily getting as much press clippings as he should into this one. But I think he's going to be a very plus guy on the offensive line for whatever team drafts him on day one here. And I could certainly see New England, right? Like this is one of those that you would think that they might go defense there maybe a little bit. Just because it's Belichick, and that's kind of the way that you tend to see them draft a little bit more so is on the defensive side of the ball there. But, that being the case, right, like where would they necessarily go, right? Like, maybe a Miles Murphy for the defensive line there a little bit. Maybe, there's a lot of other guys there, but I like the pick there and really having them kind of bolster up the line there and play in the trenches a little bit more so. So I like the pick. So. All right, that's going to move Alex and the Green Bay Packers on to the board here. And Alex going with the Miles Murphy here. Really kind of focus on the defensive side of the ball. Green Bay has a tendency to focus on the defensive side of the ball in the first round. We've seen that play out time and time and time again, where they're either drafting defense or they're drafting kind of on that offensive line side of things. This is one of those that it wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe go with a tight end potentially here. But I don't dislike the Miles Murphy pick.
Yeah, I think, if Aaron Rodgers gets traded and if Green Bay took a wide receiver here, that would just kind of be the ultimate middle finger to him as he's walking out the door. But nevertheless, I like Miles Murphy. I think he's a player that can contribute right away to this Green Bay defense as they kind of reform their new identity with Jordan Love at quarterback. And, some of the best ways to help a young quarterback is to have a stout defense. That way he's given an opportune time to make some mistakes and continue to develop on the field, even though he's had a number of years in the film room.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to move the Washington Commanders and myself onto the clock here, and they're going to go with Joey Porter Jr., cornerback out of Penn State. He's a guy that I think will end up being a very plus cornerback here. Has the pedigree for it. And I think that he will do incredibly well. I think Washington's very excited that they were able to get this player right here in the middle of the first.
Yeah, Washington seems to be much more excited about Sam Howell than anybody wants to give them credit for. Right. So I know there's rumblings about them looking at a quarterback. I'm not buying that. Like, I think it's just fodder for the draft for people to talk about. So I like this pick a lot. This, much like Nolan Smith, does seem to fit very well, right? I believe this is, again, another pick that we had just like a week ago, but this one does seem to go very, very well for what the Commanders need and to kind of help Washington and potentially their new ownership group move into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to move you and the Steelers onto the clock here at pick 17.
Okay, so pick 17. In full transparency, I had made this pick before we had news of the Allen Robinson dealings with the Rams and them bringing him in for a physical. But nevertheless, the pick was made. We kept it there. So for now, I had the Steelers taking Jackson Smith and Jigba, taking arguably the best receiver in this draft, having him fall all the way to 17, and a guy that you can pair up with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson just looked downright nasty to me. And I thought that they'd go ahead and take a shot on that to give Kenny Pickett as many weapons as possible to be able to succeed in his growth development.
I really liked the pick. In fact, after you made it, I wrote on the side there, just this was a steal for them. Obviously, we hadn't heard about the Allen Robinson piece there, but even with the Allen Robinson piece, I don't necessarily mind this one because, again, right, you've got some younger wide receivers there. You're bringing in Allen Robinson, one to see if he's, see what he's still got there. But if nothing else, you've got kind of that consummate pro that you can bring in and help mentor and really help develop some of these younger wide receivers as well. So even with the Allen Robinson one, if Jackson Smith and Jigba is still there, like, it wouldn't surprise me to see them go this route. That being said, though, the Steelers always a little bit different from some of the other things where they very much build in the trenches. So they could focus defense or they could focus offensive line here as well.
Yes, if I had to do it again, I would probably look to possibly pivot and take a good hard look at what we have left for the offensive line and see what might fit that Steelers scheme. But that's okay. There's always another draft where we can update this based off of new information.
Absolutely. So that's going to move us to pick 18. That puts the Lions and Alex on the clock here for pick 18. Alex is, thinking Detroit's going to focus on the defensive side of the ball, having taken Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback, earlier in the draft. Right here, he's going to take the safety out of Alabama and Brian Branch with pick 18. And again, this is one of those that I don't dislike the pick, but it was one of those that when I saw that one come through, I went, oh my, like, this is a 2 DBs in the first round is certainly a bold move and a bold strategy there. But it really surprised me with the fact that they could use some help on like the defensive line. And you've got a guy that a lot of analysts out there think could be a top 10 draft pick, and Tyree Wilson still on the board and could be an edge rusher, could even play a little bit of 3 technique in there.
Yeah, Tyree Wilson, yes, still out there. Michael Mayer is another one that I thought that could have fit that based off of what they, need at tight end. But I do like Brian Branch. He did very well at Alabama. He will be a very good pro. I don't hate the pick. I think I might have pivoted slightly, but overall, he wants a kneecapper and a gritty guy in championship caliber football. There's only a few programs who consistently put out consummate pros like that, and Alabama is definitely one of them.
Yep. So like it, and you know what? Detroit had a lot of issues in the secondary last year, so Alex drafted to address those and hopefully shore that up and let Detroit take that next step forward. that's going to move myself and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers onto the clock here at pick 19. And Tampa Bay, right, was a team that we talked potentially could be trying to move up there. They've got Baker Mayfield on a 1-year deal. They've got Kyle Trask, who's been the heir apparent behind Brady for the last couple of seasons here. So a little bit of a quarterback needy team here. But I don't have them going quarterback here. I have them going on the offensive side of the ball here, offensive line. And an offensive line last year that was just decimated by injuries, and really they had a hard time getting right with that one. So they're going to address the need with the big tackle out of Oklahoma, Anton Harrison.
I like this pick. I think it absolutely fills a position of need for the Buccaneers. This is always an interesting part of the draft, right? Because you never quite know what can fall to you or if you need to move up. But for what they need and to be able to give their new quarterback some added protection and a little bit of depth at that position for them, I like this for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind this one. I liked it. Let's go ahead and move on over to pick 20, where you and the Seahawks are on the clock.
So the Seattle Seahawks took Will Anderson. This one's a little interesting, but I think if they're going to play Will Anderson more at that defensive end position or outside linebacker, I think Drew Sanders is kind of that flop, right? Like he's another guy. He's more of a outside linebacker type than a defensive lineman type. So I know it looks like they're taking 2 pass rushers, but I think what they're going to do is one would end up with their hand in the dirt more often than not. I think that's going to be Will Anderson. And then they're going to allow, they're going to allow Drew Sanders to kind of free roam there at that outside linebacker position and worry more about pass coverage more so than pass rushing.
Yeah, I would agree with you. When you break it down like that, and Drew Sanders is a guy that can play a little bit of inside, a little bit of outside linebacker, and has the side to side, sideline to sideline speed to play linebacker at either of those positions there, as well as the fact that he's got a little bit of edge rushing moves on there as well. So you talk about a guy that you could bring off the blitz, you could bring down on there, like a very versatile guy out there. So you get the true speed bull rush type of guy in Will Anderson, pick 1, and you get the very versatile linebacker in Drew Sanders there. So Seattle definitely working their defensive side of the ball. I like the pick there. That's going to move us to pick 21 with the Chargers and Alex on the clock. And Alex, wasting no time here, running up to the podium to select Bijan Robinson for the Chargers. Thoughts on that one?
If they're able to do something with Austin Eckler, I think this makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, I can see where the Chargers are going with this pick, but with Austin Eckler on the roster, I think that's where I would probably pivot to somewhere else. But with Alex not here, we're speculating, right, on kind of what his thought process was behind this. Overall, we're going to like wherever Bijan goes. I like this fit for the scheme, right? Especially if Eckler's not there to be able to ground and pound. He can catch out of the backfield. You still get that red zone work and a lot of those touchdowns that Eckler provides you, just in a younger body. So I do not have issues with the pick, provided that Eckler is not on the roster.
Right. And this is one of those two that, I don't know, like part of the reason Eckler started looking at the trade was, it sounded like contract extensions, things like that fell apart rather quickly on that one. So if they're not willing to invest in a guy that's been there for, and I'm talking as an organization, the Chargers here, if they're not really willing to invest in a guy that's been there and proven it over the last little bit, I don't know if they're going to spend this kind of draft capital to go out there and get the rookie to do it. And spend first round contract money on that one. But I could be wrong, and often am when it comes to some of those things. But again, scheme wise, I think that could be amazing fit. Like you said, without Eckler there. That's going to move us to Baltimore Ravens at pick number 22. I've got the slot for them, and this was one of those that Baltimore couldn't believe that this player fell all the way down there to them. Tyree Wilson, who we mentioned earlier. A lot of folks have him slotted in as a kind of a top 10 pick on this one. So the fact that he fell to Baltimore all the way down to number 22, the Ravens very, very happy on this one, getting to address that defensive side of the ball, which that defensive side of the ball and especially the edge rush and the defensive line was a little bit of an issue, and Tyree Wilson kind of shores that up for them.
Yeah, once again, the Ravens were able to come away with a steal in the draft and do what the Baltimore Ravens do. So for this exercise, it worked out perfectly, right? They get a guy that everyone's going no-brainer, and we're helping them again. So I would agree. I've seen a lot of things where he's going top 10. It's possible that it's possible that he does still go top 10, especially as we break down these individuals, right, and kind of see how it's going, and we're not drafting based off of what two other people are doing. We're able to kind of fill out our own the way we see it. You'll have to tune in next week to find out, but for now, he's a Baltimore Raven.
I like it. All right, that's going to move you and the Minnesota Vikings on the clock at pick 23.
Minnesota Vikings. So Adam Thielen has moved on. They need a wide receiver to help take some pressure off of Justin Jefferson. And so they go out and grab Zay Flowers, who is more of a natural slot receiver based off of his size and specifically his height. But nevertheless, this guy has a very similar skill set coming out of college to Antonio Brown. Like, you don't have some of the personal baggage seemingly that AB brought over the course of his career, but he does have a similar skill set. He has great hands, can get in and out of his routes quickly, not afraid to stick his nose in when it's time to block for the run, and it gives a component for defenses to worry about in the passing game besides Justin Jefferson. So it helps kind of pair that up. Hawkinson, Jefferson, and Flowers is a nice little three-headed monster in the passing game for Kirk Cousins to make kind of one last push if he can get another contract out of the Vikings to end his career in Minnesota.
Right. Yeah, this is one that certainly makes a lot of sense. Zay Flowers is an explosive wide receiver, so I like the pairing. I like the fit there. But I do have to ask, was there any thought about the fact that Kirk Cousins is coming up on that contract there about maybe taking a guy like a Hendon Hooker to be kind of the heir apparent there?
I don't see that. I think Hendon Hooker has enough development needed that it just sets him too far back, right? Like, you want to try and capitalize while you have Jefferson on a rookie deal. There's so many building blocks to go. So at this point, you're trying to go all in, right? You are trying to make everything pay off, whether you keep Dalvin Cook, whether you release him and just run with Madison, whatever works out there in Minnesota. This is kind of their last hurrah. So they went and got a toy for Cousins, and trying to get back to more of a two-headed wide receiver monster that Thielen was a part of for a time, and then just got a little long in the tooth, right? Just wasn't quite working for the system. This pairs up with Jefferson well, and it's going to keep some safeties honest when they stack them on the same side of the field, because you're not going to be able to double Jefferson. Otherwise, Flowers is going to blow right past you and hit those deep shots. Absolutely.
All right, I like it. That's going to take us to Jacksonville Jaguars, and Alex is on the clock with pick number 24, and they are going on the defensive side of the ball, picking the cornerback out of Georgia, and Kelee Ringo.
So I like this pick. There's been rumors lately about Ringo creeping back up into the first round. I think initially right after the national championship game, he was kind of slated there. His metrics for his combine and pro day were not as good as people thought they might have been. But the guy is a baller, right? We saw that in the 2021 championship game against Alabama. He played very well through the season, can get a little bit handsy at times, but I think that's a lot of young cornerbacks. So this is not specific to him necessarily. His biggest challenge is the mental side of the game and not losing focus when one or two plays kind of stack up on him and don't go his way, because he will get picked on a lot as the rookie corner.
Yeah. And this one is certainly one that fills the need for them, and I could certainly see them doing that one there, especially with kind of the way the board has fallen for them. The only other spot that I would see them going with some of the talent that's left out there right now would be a tight end type of pick, which is where I had them going when I had that pick last week for them. But certainly a pick that fills the need, and certainly a guy that we could see sneak back up into the first round.
And it's another team, if it falls, it's another team stacking up on national championship talent, right? Keely Ringo is part of the back-to-back. They had Trayvon Walker, who they took first overall last year. So you're pairing up some Georgia boys again, trying to find some strength in what was arguably a historic defense back in 2021. We've seen the reports from coaching staffs that they like how well these Georgia players are prepared for the NFL game. Now it's time to, kind of everyone to put their money where their mouth is, essentially, and these guys got to show up and ball out.
Yeah, agreed. All righty, that's going to move us to pick number 25. I have got the Giants on the clock, and this is one that the Giants are very happy with the way that the board fell to them at this point, right? Like they have several kind of positional needs out there, but they just signed their quarterback to the long-term deal. You've got the new head coach that is shown the ability to develop players and really kind of bring an offensive system into place there. And they're very happy with the fact that they've got two wide receivers sitting here that could easily be first-round grade wide receivers. They're going to take Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC. I think that he ultimately fits kind of what the Giants are looking to do here. It could be a guy that can play a little bit of the slot, can play inside, can play outside. And I think will play very well and is a little bit more of a polished route runner than the other guy like Quentin Johnston that's still on the board.
Yeah, my only concern with Addison to the Giants is he willing to block in the run game for Brian Daboll? I think that could be a potential hiccup as Daboll does. He's frustrated if players aren't buying in all the way. So Jordan Addison will have to. They did not run the ball a whole heck of a lot at USC, obviously with Williams there at quarterback and Lincoln Riley in his system. But that's okay. Good receiver nonetheless. He fills a position of absolute need for the Giants as their receiving core was in shambles last year. They needed a pass catcher, and they went out and got one.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's going to move you and the Dallas Cowboys at pick 26 on the clock.
So here's another position I kind of tossed with here for a second, right? Like they should go offensive line. They could go defensive tackle. They could go tight end, right? They have a lot of different things that are available to them this late in the draft, so they're pretty happy about it. But it's the Cowboys, and they want to make a splash. And they like splashy plays, and they took Quentin Johnston out of TCU to pair up with CeeDee Lamb and give Dak Prescott another weapon as they try and reload and make a deep run in the playoffs here next year.
I could see that one. I could see them doing that, right? Like you talked the splashy side of things. That's certainly a Cowboy-esque type of move where you take the guy with the kind of the raw skill position player over maybe something more of a positional need there. I would like to see them personally take a tight end in this position, but I can certainly see them going with the wide receiver on that front. So I like the pick. Let's go ahead and head on over to the Buffalo Bills, and Alex has got them at pick 27. Alex is going to address that offensive line out there in Buffalo, which needs a lot of help. They're going to go with Osiris Torrance, the guard out of Florida. Thoughts on this one?
I don't know that it makes sense for Buffalo, only because with as much as Buffalo likes to drop back and sling it, this is not Torrance's strong suit. There's much more zone run, grab your guy and just hold on and kind of plow him back into the ground. It's going to be a little bit different up in Buffalo. Not that he can't do it, but I do think that there's going to be a steeper learning curve than what some might imagine going into this offense. But nevertheless, they do need help on the offensive line. They need to keep Josh Allen healthy and upright as he starts to run a little bit less, right? They're trying to find ways to keep him in the pocket a little bit more, not take so much risk. So best way to do that is protect him, give him plenty of time in the pocket.
Yeah, I certainly think that they're going to go offensive line here, but I think you're right. I think they'd rather the board maybe falls a little bit different for them, and they're able to get somebody with more of a tackle type of ability, more so than a guard type of deal here, and really try and hope that Anton Harrison falls to him, Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright. One of those kind of guys falls down there. I don't know that it'll happen, but I think that's what Buffalo's really secretly hoping for there. Alrighty. Let's go ahead and move on over to the Cincinnati Bengals at pick 28. I've got the call there, and the Bengals offensive line has been a area of concern for them a little bit. They've also got some other positional needs along the defensive side of the ball there, but they can't believe that probably the most polished tight end in the draft class fell to them. And they're going to take Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. Michael Mayer, like I said, is probably the most polished tight end in this, is an offensive, can play a offensive weapon type of thing, can move in line, can move into the slot away from the ball there a little bit. Pretty good run blocker as well. And probably, like I said, he's the most polished tight end coming in here. So he's a plug and play type of need for them day one.
Yeah, cosign. I think it fits. It's a potential weapon, but it is an extension of the offensive line. And he's probably, like you said, the most well-rounded. If they're looking for just offensive line type help and more of a skill position project, Darnell Washington would fit better to what they're doing. But I understand that they want some receiving presence there as they continue to as I trip over myself, as they continue to get Burrow weapons and make sure that defenses are spread out and force them to kind of pick their poison, if you will, for the Bengals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead and move. You've got the Saints, pick 29. You're on the clock.
Saints, lots of holes, limited draft capital, limited cap space, all kind of sorts of problems here as they got this pick via Denver, via San Francisco, via Miami, via San Francisco again, or however the hell this pick kind of worked out. This pick has been traded like 5 different times. But nevertheless, Saints are on the clock here. They're going to get themselves some help. They're going to take Deonte Banks, the cornerback out of Maryland. I think they're pretty happy that he fell this far. He's a long, rangy corner, good ball hawking instincts. And I think in this division, now that you've kind of had this turnover at quarterback, he has time to develop. You're not going against Tom Brady. You're not going against a Drew Brees. You're not going against, the yesteryear AFC South. So Banks will be able to come in there and really be able to develop and learn in that system, and it will help fill an immediate need for what the Saints are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, you get to face Desmond Ridder twice a year. You get to face either Kyle Trask or Baker twice this coming year. So you're right,
rookie.
like it, right? Yeah. So you're good.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying you're spot on there, right? Like you're going to allow a guy to come in and kind of develop there a little bit. The Saints, with all of the other needs that they have there, right? Like that defense, which had been so good for so long, is an aging defense there. And you've seen them losing guys due to salary cap issues, due to kind of the age side of things. Like this gives them a chance to kind of bring in and get a young guy and allow him to develop. I like the call and I like the move there. Any other thoughts on that one?
Nope, shared them all.
All right, I like it. That's going to move Alex back onto the clock with pick 30. And I can tell you that the guy picking at 31 was unhappy by this pick, but for a completely different reason. But anyway, He took Brian Bresee, the defensive lineman, defensive tackle, out of Clemson here for the Eagles at pick 30.
I get it, but they just took Jordan Davis last year.
Right.
Now, the Eagles are a team that rotate through 7 defensive linemen like all the freaking time. So that is part of what they need. He is a high motor, high intensity, locker room leading type of guy. So the personality fits, right? He will buy into what the Eagles are wanting to do. I think I might pivot slightly if it were me, but again, I understand the allure to it, right? They've lost talent on the defensive side of the ball because of some contracts, but I think really they'd like to look at the secondary here and try and fill in some gaps in the secondary. But nevertheless, if you're rotating 7 or 8 defensive linemen, you have to have bodies to do it, and this is one that helps.
Yeah, this is one that I think this would be a prime target for Philadelphia to trade this pick away, right? Like, we talked earlier about teams that have apparently kind of have their bridge quarterback in place, but this is one of those we could see a Hendon Hooker fall into either pick 30, pick 31 here, and either the Eagles or the Chiefs kind of trade back and kick that can down the road a little bit there. I think the Eagles are probably more likely to do it than the Chiefs are. But it wouldn't surprise me to see a team like Seattle maybe try and trade up and get a Hendon Hooker, or Detroit potentially trying to trade up here and do that one. Wouldn't surprise me on this one. But I mentioned that the guys at 31, the Chiefs, were upset by the pick here, not because the Chiefs actually wanted him. The guy doing all the graphics was just going to utilize last week's same graphic at pick 31 and call it a day at Brian Bresee. But that was not to be because Alex spoiled the fun there. So anyway, any other thoughts on Brian Bresee and the pick to the Eagles?
Nope, not the Eagles, but I do have a surprising option for your next pick.
Okay, I like it because this is one I went back and forth several places. Like the Chiefs, who have pick 31 here, we're on the clock. They've kind of just got the embarrassment of riches that kind of throughout their lineup there a little bit, and they can go several different places. Really having their cornerstones in place and having some younger options there. But they're going to go after the edge rusher here, Will McDonald IV, the edge rusher out of Iowa State. Breaking the Iowa State curse here, where we haven't seen an Iowa State player drafted in the first round, I think, since 1973. I believe that's the how long it's been. But Will McDonald will be the guy to break that streak there. And this is a guy, high motor, high skill set. He's a guy that can get in there and can be disruptive, turn the ball over. Had like 9-10 strip sack, forced fumbles last year. So this is a guy that I like here and can be a defensive disruptor on the line there. But I'm very curious to see what you've got on the curveball you alluded to.
Personal thought, Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
For a team that they traded Tyreek, which is fine. They did it with not a hodgepodge, but a different cast of characters between Juju and bringing in, Juju and why can I not think of his name? The guy from the Giants that got kicked out. Doesn't matter. I'm struggling here. Sorry.
That's who you're thinking of.
Yes, Kadarius Toney. Oh my gracious. That MSV, right? Valdez-Scantling. Obviously, Travis Kelce's still there. Hyatt brings that next level speed, though, and that's really what some of this is. And it just adds a layer or a wrinkle back into the Chiefs' offense. He is a guy who can play inside or outside a little bit. Built-ish. He's actually a little bit shorter, so I can't say he's built like Tyreek, but a little bit shorter, but similar skill set coming out of college. Not quite as fast as Tyreek Hill was, but nevertheless, good deep ball threat. Add a layer to that offense to just keep stretching that defense out so they can continue to hit Kelce and Kadarius Toney underneath and just kind of see where that plays out for him. So just something that little fun, right? As they're able to add a weapon because of their embarrassment of riches. They're not pinned in. I like the pass rusher because I wasn't thinking about that before you put McDonald in there, but I'm going to go Jalen Hyatt.
Well, so you ready for the other one that I was debating on there as well? The other one I was debating on heavily was Dalton Kincaid had fallen all the way down here, right? Like, you've got Kelsey, who still looks very much in the prime of everything, but a little bit, getting a little bit up there in the age. Who knows how long that he's going to continue that one there. But Dalton Kincaid plays like a souped up, big wide receiver, more so than a tight end type of deal. And that could be another kind of offensive weapon that they could run in there. Could you imagine them really running like, 12 personnel or 21 personnel on that? Like, really bringing that in, and you've got two tight end sets and you're having to figure out how to guard both Dalton Kincaid and Travis Kelce. Like, forget about it.
No, that'd be fun. I think Kincaid's biggest problem in that offense is he does not block well enough for Andy Reid.
No, I think you're right. And that's kind of why I pivoted back to the defensive side of the ball. But I just thought how fun could that be where you have Kelce in tight, you split Kincaid into the slot right next to him. And then you've got Tony and MVS on the outside there to do their thing, and you've got to try and figure out how in the world you're going to really guard both Kelce and Kincaid coming off the line on the same side.
Yeah, and there's still Sky Moore too, right? He came on a little bit at the end of his rookie year, so maybe receiver's not the option because they just took Sky Moore last year. But when your quarterback's Patrick Mahomes, you kind of just get him whatever he wants, needs, desires, and then you find out and figure out the rest because him and Andy Reid are that well connected.
Right, especially when you've still got him under contract for like another 8 years. So, Alrighty, so that's gonna wrap up the first round mock 2.0. Any surprising things for you? Any further thoughts on any of those?
No, we had some similarities. We had some differences, right? Like it's always interesting. I think we probably missed a trade or two as we got into the back end of that draft, but that's okay. Right. The trades are unpredictable. We think we know what's going to happen. There's some that might be a little bit more obvious than others, but honestly, to just go kind of straight through is fun nonetheless.
Absolutely. So we're going to run through our dynasty big boards here real quick and just kind of see where we're aligned, where we're not aligned, and kind of get our thoughts here on this one, kind of give everybody, pre-draft landing spots determined here. But let's go ahead and get into this one here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the QB dynasty big board. You, me, and Alex all seeing the same thing here with the three quarterbacks at number one, or the quarterback number one, CJ Stroud. You and I, so we'll just move on there. You and I taking Anthony Richardson number two, Alex taking Bryce Young at number two. Any thoughts there? Anything you want to expound on?
No, I think the reason I went Richardson over Bryce Young is the ceiling for Anthony Richardson.
Right.
Like that's really what it is, coming down to, especially with these dynasty drafts and you're trying to figure out where your home run is. His ability to use his feet a little bit more. He's not as health resistant as Bryce Young is. He's a bigger bodied quarterback, and they're both going to get plenty of opportunities. And they're both going to have to work on some things in their own respect. But I do like Richardson's ability to use his legs and the fact that I just think that he is built for the long haul a little bit more than Bryce Young is.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Young certainly being kind of that smaller frame there, along the lines of the Kyler type of build, and we'll see how that kind of comes to play. Not your prototypical NFL quarterback from a stance and build side of things. But, that moves us down number three. I've got Bryce Young. You and Alex both going with Will Levis on that one. And I get it, bigger body, prototypical type of guy there. I just think that Bryce Young kind of, has shown that he's that proven winner, and we'll see what happens here at the next level. But any further thoughts on number three here?
No, you kind of nailed it, right? Same thing. I'm not I am not the biggest believer in Bryce Young's ability to go into the league and kind of transform it. I think he's going to have plenty of struggles. Between his frame, between the fact that I don't think he uses his feet enough for what he can do. Just personal preference at this point. I would rather have, if I were drafting it, this is the order that I would draft it in. You know, I would rather have Will Levis and have that conventional big arm, big body quarterback with some mobility than maybe a more dynamic passer in Bryce Young. But overall, I'm afraid that he's going to get folded up on in the NFL, and his career is going to be a struggle in the wrong situation with a bad offensive line.
Yeah, that could be an issue there, right? Depending upon landing spot, that line could certainly need a lot of work. Just kind of rounding that one out, right? So number 4, Alex had Hendon Hooker. I had Will Levis, Bryce Young. We've already kind of hit up the Will Levis, Bryce Young. Hendon Hooker, a little bit surprising there. You and I had him one spot lower at number 5. Alex had Anthony Richardson at number 5 there. And all of us, putting Stetson Bennett there at number 6. Anybody you wanted to highlight here?
No, I think Hooker. I think Hendon Hooker will get his opportunity, right? He's recovering from injury, so we're probably not going to see him on the field at all this year, and that's okay, right? He'll get drafted. He'll be able to come in, do some film work study. Him and Hooker and Bennett both, right, are a little bit older as far as quarterbacks go, so they've seen maybe a little bit more, and if that helps either one of them in the film room, they might get an opportunity sooner rather than later, as long as health is there in Hooker's case. But I do think because of his size and his arm, I think Hooker's probably going to see a couple more opportunities than Stetson Bennett would.
I would agree with that. Let's go ahead and let's head on over to the Dynasty running back big board. No surprise here. Bijan number 1 across the board there. You and Alex taking Jamar Gibbs. At number 2, I had Zach Charbonnet on that one. And then flip it around, I had Gibbs at 3. You guys had Charbonnet at number 3 there. The only reason that I went with Charbonnet over Jahmyr Gibbs is the simple fact that Charbonnet has the ability and the size more so to be kind of that 3-down back with the skill set where he can do it. He's not as polished or as good of a pass catcher as Gibbs is, but that was really the reason I kind of snuck him up over that was just the simple fact of the size on that one. And he has the skill set to do 3-down more so than what Jahmyr Gibbs has there. So anything else you want to highlight on 2 and 3?
No, I think that's pretty close. I know Gibbs is gaining some steam here. Is kind of where I did that, and I think part of it's program pedigree. Nothing that Zach Charbonnet did wrong. I want to see it against big defensive linemen, right? That's just not the Pac-12 style. They are very much a speed conference, right? Spread you out, find the gaps, run it up, run it through, the B gap because there's a giant hole because you're dropping 8 to cover all the passing routes. I just want to see it in more of an NFL form. I know Gibbs can do it because he did it in the SEC, and those defensive fronts are closer to what you see in the NFL than what Charbonnet saw out of UCLA.
Fair enough. Tajay Spears, consensus number 4. Devin Akane, number 5 on that one. And then number 6, 7, pretty close, right? Like you and Alex had Kendre Miller at number 6. I had Israel Abikanda at number 6, and then just reverse that around. You guys had him at number 7, and I had Kendre Miller at number 7. Both those guys very, very close in my book there, to the point where it's kind of a coin flip if I'm sitting there staring down at those.
Yeah, landing spot could flip those on either side, right? That's really what it is. So this will look a lot different 2 weeks from now.
And then number 8, you had Sean Tucker. I had Eric Gray. I'm just a big believer in Eric Gray. I think that he's got a special skill set, and in a right kind of situation, could be absolutely amazing. And then you and I were both consensus on Zach Evans and Tank Bigsby at number 10. Any thoughts on any of those guys?
No. Other than what I just said, right? 2 weeks from now, this might change a little bit. Landing spot does play it, so pre-draft dynasty ranking big board. We could see some of this kind of turned on its head if we don't love the landing spots that these guys fall into here in a few. No, I guess just over a week.
Right. All righty. Wide receivers, we got JSN at number 1, consensus. Number 2, kind of a very different deal there. Alex has got Quentin Johnston. I've got Jordan Addison. You've got Zay Flowers on that one. And I can see Zay Flowers on that one. The most explosive guy out there. I like Jordan Addison a little bit better than Quentin Johnston just from the route running perspective on that one. Quentin Johnston, big body guy there. And really that's, you, me, and Alex just had to have those 3 guys mix and mingled on between 2 and 4. Mm-hmm. And again, landing spot can make all the difference on that one for me, but anything that stands out to you on that one?
No, I think that all kind of makes sense, right? I think they're all pretty close together. I think it's what flavor you're looking for, right? Flowers, more explosive. Addison, probably a better route runner. Johnston, arguably better hands, but focus does come into question.
Right. And then number 5, Alex had Josh Downs on that one. You and I both went Jalen Hyatt on that one. And very much for, right, like we even saw that when we were going through that, talking on Kansas City on that pick there, right? Like we weren't talking Josh Downs coming up there. It was Jalen Hyatt. We were thinking that could potentially sneak up there into pick 31. I think size is going to be a lot to do with that one. But any other thoughts on number 5?
Yeah, size and the ability for explosive plays, right? I think Hyatt's just built and his strength is more explosive plays. We saw that at Tennessee. I think for him to be successful right away in the NFL, that's what's going to come to the forefront, and then they're going to work on his route tree as the year goes on.
I like it. Any thoughts on 6 through 10? Anybody you want to highlight?
I don't know about anybody specifically highlighting just because we don't know where they're going yet, right? Like, very much so. Most of these guys, we've talked about this when we were breaking down wide receivers. Most of these guys are smaller receivers, right?
Uh-huh.
They're not true X receivers. You're looking at more Y or Z receivers. You don't have too many of these guys who can just line up outside. That's where they're going to live, and they're going to win. A lot of these guys are going to have to be moved around in formation to be successful. They're not going to be able to do it on their own right away. And so those players, which go to more pass-friendly offenses and more creative offenses, are probably going to show a little bit better to start their career than the ones who go to, Baltimore, right? Baltimore is where receivers go to die.
Yes, I would agree with that. Alrighty, and then that's going to bring us to the tight end. Really kind of not, so some jockeying of positions on all of these guys, but anybody kind of stand out here that you really want to highlight?
I think I'm going to speak for myself here because I'm the oddball out. You and Alex had Michael Mayer at the first tight end spot. I had Kincaid. I chose Kincaid because if Michael Mayer, with his ability to block, I think it's going to limit what he does to start his career, because they'll continue to tweak his receiving and his route running while he's able to block. Kincaid, if you're drafting him, you're drafting that boy to run routes and catch passes. Like, that is exactly what it is. So for a dynasty purpose, I would rather take Kincaid, only because I think his opportunity and target share for the first few years of his career is going to be larger and have more opportunities than what Michael Mayer may see.
That's fair. I can certainly see that. I would the Michael Mayer just simply from the standpoint that the fact that he will block more so, and it has more of a skill set around that, he'll probably be on the field more so than what we'll see Dalton Kincaid, at least rookie year, on this one. So, but yeah, I could go either way, and landing spot would certainly skew that one pretty vividly for me on that one there as well. But
absolutely.
that being said, right, like, in a rookie dynasty draft, I'm not drafting tight end in the first round. Probably not even the second round. It's third, fourth round that I'm going to start looking at these guys.
Kyle Pitts was kind of the exception, right? All the hype around Kyle Pitts. I think Brock Bowers next year will be in that same vein. I think Bowers is a guy that you are going to try and draft in the first round in a rookie dynasty draft. Outside of that, these guys really should be, mid second round is when the first one should fall off, maybe late second round for the second one. And then third round, you'll probably see a whole bunch of them go.
Right. I would agree with that. Alrighty. Well, any other thoughts? Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, thanks for tuning in. Obviously, subscribe. Big show coming up here in a week and a half. But we have another one before then. And next week, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but I believe next week we will each do our own individual draft, right? So we'll be breaking that down for everybody as we see it. So that way Derek and Alex can't screw up what my plans are for the 31 picks in the first round and vice versa. But all good stuff as we get ready for D-Day, if you will. And I'm looking forward to it. So subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate everybody.
Absolutely. One of the other things we're going to hit up next week as well is we're going to go through some of our favorite props for draft day as well, and really kind of how Vegas sees it. And we're gonna have some fun with that at the after we go through our own mock drafts on that one. So it'll be a blast, a lot of fun. Make sure that you're tuning in. That's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. We'll catch Alex again next week. Have a good one, y'all. Be safe. Toodaloos.